Hi, friends. Welcome to another episode of Soaring Through Chaos. And the reason we do this is because we are in the midst of unprecedented chaos, at least in my lifetime. There's so much going on, whether it's the pandemic or it's the fires in California, for instance, where I've lived for more than 25 years. And a lot of things happening literally around the world. Job situations are precarious, and we don't even know where the world is going. But in the midst of all this, I find people who have worked towards building community, alerting us about challenges that are coming, and hoping that we can build a more harmonious world. One of them is somebody I've known pretty much all my adult life, but we reconnected only about 4 years ago. When I was in the US, I'd lost touch, and that's Bhadresh Padya. Bhadresh ji, tell us about you. You've done some incredible work, especially in the last few years. Tell us what you've been up to.
No, actually, the journey started, when I was a kid, and I was a fifth standard kid, and our class teacher was a lady, middle-aged lady, you know, she was kind of so committed to the children, and she was committed to introduce children to nature, and she used to take us on Sunday to this Borivali in R.A. Mill Colony, jungle, for bird watching, for nature, and all that thing. And I got connected to nature at that young age by, I don't have words for her. You know, one of the most profound dimensions that got created in my life because of her. And she is no more alive, but I have a deep gratitude for what
Do you
she has
remember her
done.
name? Do you remember her
Yeah,
name?
Harshada Ban. Harshada Ban, we used to call her. And right now I'm talking, I can see her in my class. That lady had her own life, but Sunday she used to give up for us as the children. She was clear that this kid, when they'll get connected to nature, that will make a difference. That's where my journey began, to be close to nature. And the second person who really connected to my second passion is chemistry, is my father. In standard 6, I saw the first time experiment done in front of me of sulfur burning, the magnesium strip burning, and I was fascinated. I wanted those material with me to do something at home, but my teacher didn't allow me. I actually stole them from the school. And then after I went home, and when mom went to sleep, I went to the kitchen, took the ladle, poured the sulfur powder, and start burning it in kitchen. The whole house was filled with sulfur dioxide. My mother woke up and she didn't realize what's happening in the house. And I had a beating of my life. And I was upset and had a cutty with my mom. And the evening when dad was coming at around 7 o'clock, I ran out of the house and came along with him as if I thought dad is with me in this fight with mother. And at that moment, my mother came out and started shouting at me, what did he do today at home? This boy is doing crazy thing. And you are in office, you don't know what is happening at home. And my dad is like between son and the wife. And then he heard her out completely, and then he looked at me. But did you do that? And I had to say, yes, I did that. He says, don't use mama's kitchen for doing that. If you want, you can create your own lab. In balcony, let's create a lab.
Wow.
And then that's weekend, Saturday, he took me to the Princess Street where you get all these laboratory chemicals, glassware, everything. And I was walking on the street of Princess Street. And he says, take whatever you want to take. Create your own lab. And that's where my journey began with the chemistry, in my balcony, doing experiment and learning chemistry. And that journey, and when I became 10th standard, 12th, then I did IIT entrance. I had a good rank. Everyone's telling me to do electronics and com science, but I said nothing doing. I'm doing chemical engineering.
Wow.
And that's where I got into chemical engineering. And my two passion, nature and chemistry, and then become chemical. And the journey began, and I completed my graduation at IIT Bombay, and then I actually supposed to go to US, but for whatever reason, I got a pretty good project in our department to do PhD. And we had the DST project to do some fundamental research on particle technology and crystallization technology. And I jumped into that, and for 3 years I was doing that. During the 7 years also, I was very much involved in the Nature and Wildlife Club at IIT Bombay. Virtually during those days, I've traveled to almost all national parks, organized a lot of camps, and also organized a lot of what we call the wildlife movies of Atomboros and Living Planet, and then the other thing, and we used to get all this thing from British Council Library.
I remember that. I remember that. It was
Yeah.
a very impressionable age for
Yeah.
all of us.
So in IIT campus, I actually could practice both. I got deeply connected to nature, and I also kept on connecting myself to chemistry and chemical engineering. And then when I came out and came to the industry, and I started traveling in what we call in India, the golden corridor of chemical industry from Mumbai to Ahmedabad, and a kind of pollution I've seen. And being a nature lover, I worked with some of the corporates. And it was hard for me to do research and to develop technology where we can really reduce pollution. But I couldn't kind of get across. And at one point, I had to give up job, and I came back to Mumbai. And I thought I need to start something which will kind of really start addressing this environmental resource level. And that's where this green chemistry and green engineering, something which I came across, and I was kind of blown up. This is what I want to do in life. This is what I'm going to bet my life on. This is where I'm going to build a team which is willing to bet life. And that's where the journey began. And we founded a company. I used to guide the student. And I used to visit the hostel room over the weekend, stay with him in a hostel to keep grappling with this whole new idea, startup idea. Those days, people were using startup only for the software and IT industries. You know, that was a big buzz. No one used to talk about startup and startup in the chemistry or the chemical engineering. And we had a startup starting in a hostel room those days. It was quite a journey. First 10 years, we had no idea what we have taken on. We had no clue how to go about, how to get across to the various communities, whether the industry, whether it is government bodies, pollution control, regulatory bodies. So it's a journey from 1997 to almost 2007. We broke down many times, and most of the people will exit, but for whatever reason, we never exited. We will sail through. And we kept on it. And we kept on reinventing ourselves, whether it's a business model, whether it's a kind of a whole new technology, whether it's whatever it takes. We had no clue where to get fund from, because no one is willing to fund. Everyone is funding software and IT. We had to ask funding from our close friends, ask funding from some relatives, some friends. So that was a journey of building a startup. The name we had given to that startup was Eureka. Keep doing something new which creates Eureka for the world. And that name really inspired us, kept on sustaining us. So this is a journey I'm telling, very short journey how. And then, yeah, at one point things started clicking. And we started having a team. We started having successful case studies. But still, it was a tip of iceberg. The problem was so huge. And we as one single company, it had to start off with still resource challenges. we realized that we need to invite many people in this game. And that's where we floated a non-profit activity called Green Chemistry Foundation. And through that foundation, we started connecting to people from here in India, those who are passionate and those who are interested in doing something in green chemistry, also people from abroad. And we started creating community under that banner. We started organizing seminars, workshops, exhibitions. We started interacting with various critical mass, whether it's Ministry of Chemicals and Fertilizer, Ministry of Environment and Forest, Department of Science and Technology, whether it's IIT Bombay Prof, the director or head of the Department of Chemistry or Chemical Engineering, whether it's a UD the director or the head of the chemistry, chemical engineering. We started contacting all critical mass to bring them together. And this platform really took off in 2009. And it's been a decade journey. Today we have a very healthy community. It's a global community, and a lot of India, different people are there who is taking forward this positive green chemistry in the chemical industry, where chemical industry can be free from the pollution. So this journey is on, and this is a nutshell. I'm just telling you what it takes to be in a something which is really worth it for everyone. It is worth it for our planet. It is worth it for our society. It is worth it for our country. It is worth it for our region. It is worth it for our own industry. If you are running chemical industry, green chemistry and green chemical is really worth it. And it is not difficult. It's a matter of attempt. Fumbling and falling and again making an attempt. Fumbling and falling, again making an attempt, and ultimately you make it. That's the journey that we have been going through, and that's what we're inspiring everyone to take on this journey, and especially the next generation youth. That's a big opportunity they have. That's a problem worth solving right now. That's the world needs it. That's what the young people can take on. This environment challenge can be solved, and it is solvable. So that's what I want to share as a very brief journey.
Well, Bhadresh Bhai, tell us more about green chemistry, because not everybody in our audience may know about it. I also learned about it only in the last, I would say, 5 years. The sustainability group at Stanford used to talk about green chemistry. But
Right.
What are the risks of the way chemicals are produced, or the whole chemical industry is today, or has been in the last, I would say, 3 to 4 decades? And what is the solution to the green chemistry solution? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, see, if we look at the chemical industry and how it all began, it's somewhere around 1836. The Kekulé, a scientist who actually first saw a benzene ring in a dream. And that was a big, big milestone in organic chemistry. In 1856, we as a human being first time made a synthetic black dye. And from that point onward, there are so many applications started exploring of various chemicals, whether it's food industry, whether it's the fragrance, pharmaceutical, dyes, pigment, agrochemicals, you name it. It is everywhere in our life, and that's whole big momentum happened during that time till 1900. And then the First World War, when it started fueling chemical industry like anything. Because during First World War, the need for the chemical really rise like anything. And that's where the huge plant came in Europe. And it didn't end there. Then its Second World War, that fueled at another level the chemical industry. And those days, the chemical industry had only one target: produce. They had no concern for environment. They had no concern for quality. It was just produce. That was the need of hour. And a huge manufacturing was done, but without having any concern for environment or any concern for even quality. That's the war time. After war is over, what do we do with such huge plants, huge manufacturing facility? And that's where the whole consumerism was promoted in society, so that this plant will run. And that's the time TV came, and a huge new marketing tool came. Through TV, they started advertising, and a lot of consumers created it. And it has gone up so much in Europe and America that in 1969 in US, there's an Ohio state where this used to manufacture huge amount of chemical, and there is a river, Ohio River, and it caught fire because all this chemical industries were dumping their waste into that river, organic waste. Most of the people saw that incident like a kind of curiosity. From all of the US, people were converging to see fire, the river which is on fire. But there were some thinkers and think tanks, they started questioning what is happening. And then in 1971, the Pollution Control Act, US EPA came into existence, Air Pollution Control Act, Water Pollution Control Act, and the Soil Pollution Control Act. And from that point onward, the chemical industries started having tough time in those parts of the world. Similarly, Europe followed immediately. And by the time it is 1975, they started outsourcing this chemical manufacturing, highly polluting, to India first. And that's the way the whole chemical industry started picking up in India, in Maharashtra state and then in Gujarat state. And kind of pollution that happened in these two states was mind-boggling. This is all synthetic chemistry. It was invented at the time, wartime. There was no concern for environment. And time was so important that they have to quickly make something which has that application. So no one was concerned about what is happening to environment. Then there's a whole consumer phase began. That time also it was all production quality. There was no concern for environment. People who were doing research, people who were developing technologies, there was no concern. That paradigm did not exist. Then the end of the pipe treatment came. That time also the management was interested only in find a quick solution to how to take care of this pollution rather than really doing the next generation research and how to have a prevention of pollution at source and building such knowledge and technologies. It was not, instead of that, the much more shortcut was taken to outsource it to third world country. So first it was outsourced to India, and from 1990 onwards it started getting outsourced from China. Now, during this time, there were a lot of thinkers in Western world and other part of the world. They started questioning why we do chemistry this way, which is highly polluting. And that's where the people started thinking, can we do chemistry in green way? Can we really look at how we are doing chemistry at the very fundamental level, where we are only creating desired molecules and we are not creating any unwanted, risky molecules. And that's where the green chemistry movement began in 1990. It didn't pick up much pace. But from there was a landmark book which was published in 1998 of Theory of Green Chemistry by Professor Paul Anatas at Yale University and Dr. John Werner. He was working with the Kodak those days. And that book revolutionized the whole movement in the world of this. I also got introduced to green chemistry through that book. So green chemistry is basically looking at the chemical transformation. And whenever we are looking at chemical transformation, you are looking at a whole new fundamental where you are able to convert raw material into only desired product. And you're not allowing any unwanted side reaction. And you are making product, and hence you are not generating any unnecessary molecule which we call pollutant. And you don't have to then throw that out. It's pretty simple. It's a matter of people have to go back to the lab and do thousands and thousands and lakhs of experiment work, and through fundamental thinking of thermodynamics and kinetics, they have to keep creating new knowledge. It requires lots of experimentation also. While doing fundamental thinking, it also requires a lot of experiment because you have to invent it. You cannot go to the library and find out has anyone has done it. So it is actually questioning the way things are done and applying a whole new fundamental and really do in totally new way, such that you are making the product which is free from any pollution. So that's what the green chemistry, it's pretty much the way you do a synthetic chemistry, you do that way, thinking and experimentation, everything. What the process of doing invention is pretty much same, but your mindset now is more on inventing something which is green. The fundamentals of thermodynamics and kinetics remain the same. But the way you approach now to invent something with a lot of green conscious, and you keep on doing research till you don't find that solution. So that's what the green chemistry is all about. Doing chemistry is more atmospheric condition. Your pressure, temperature, your pH, you know, how it has, is it closer to a nature, the way nature does the chemistry. The green chemistry looks at catalyst, which is more a sustainable metal catalyst. Like iron, copper, they are very sustainable, they are around in nature, it has been used in nature. Nature doesn't use platinum, palladium, and all those exotic metals. Nature has rejected that metal long back. I don't know why human beings started using those metals as a catalyst. It's a carcinogen. So green chemistry focuses on using only those metals, which is sustainable metal and which is not dangerous to any species. Green chemistry focuses on recycle. Whether whatever water you use, whatever solvent you use, it has to be completely recycled back in process. So it's the same whatever chemistry you do, but with the green thinking. And that's where you come up, you design, you come to a whole new paradigm where you can have a new solution which works in a way that your environment footprint is zero or your environment footprint is minimum. So that's what in nutshell, in layman language, I will just put it, what is green chemistry.
Wow, and it sounds fairly complex. A lot of investments in R&D, a lot of research, a lot of innovation. So Bhadresh bhai, one of the things that as business people, a lot of people are always interested in maximizing the return on investment. So with green chemistry, definitely the cost will go up, at least in the R&D phase, until they can perfect the technology so that they have minimum amount of effluents, minimum amount of pollutants, and getting the right product without throwing garbage into the environment. What is the financial benefit, or what are the other benefits of using green chemistry instead of the already existing chemistry?
Yeah. So the green chemistry, if it is implemented and incorporated in designing the technology for the plant, first of all, overall material, what we call it, yield goes up. And that's the net extra profit. Second, that your plant is more safer because you are operating in a more safer condition. This technology, green chemistry technology, always operates at atmospheric pressure, normal pH, a temperature which are not exotically high. They are very safe.
So it's much closer to nature.
Inherent safety. This green chemistry based technology has inherent safety. All those accidents that we find all over the world in chemical industry, that's because that technology they are using is not inherently safe. Third thing, that it reduces your environment footprint like anything, whether it's air, water, or the solid. So your effluent treatment cost is gone. So previous chemistry gives a cost-centric approach. Everywhere you're having a cost-centric approach. In the chemical reactor, you are not getting all conversion. I'll give an example typical in pharmaceutical industry. When 1 mole you charge raw material, You are supposed to pack the final product 1 mole theoretically. World average of pharmaceutical industry, they are packing only 0.35, means almost 0.65 is guttered. That's a kind of leakage. And that's the kind of effluent load every 1 kg of the product they pack in pharmaceutical industry, especially I'm talking about active pharma ingredient, API. Chemistry ensures the complete conversion. So whatever you're inputting as a raw material, you can pack the material almost closer to theoretical. And that's huge profit. Green chemistry always ensures, creates a technology which is inherently safe. That's what normally inbuilt in green chemistry. It's a safer technology. It operates at atmospheric pressure, its temperature is low, its pH is more near water. So it does not operate in highly acidic or alkaline condition or very high temperatures or very low temperatures. So it's more safer and energy friendly. Green chemistry technology is always energy friendly and more safer. Green chemistry based technologies are always more profitable because it's an inherent nature of that chemistry. Also, green chemistry based technology, if you implement plant, you do not have a cost of environment treatment, effluent treatment. There's no capital investment is required for that, no treatment cost is required. So at all level, the green chemistry based technology is a profit centric, and the synthetic chemistry based technology at all level, it's a cost centric. So green chemistry based technology is something gives you clear cut edge when you want to play a long term game. The only thing is that initially you have to invest significantly and you need to give a gestation period for that technology to arise. So you need to really have the inventor and innovator mindset. And sometimes I have seen in industry that is the most challenging. We have approached many industry many times with that we can create solution. And industry will respond, okay, fine, you create solution at your own risk, then make sure that it works somewhere and then you come to us. So who will take that risk? If you go to investor, which I have actually gone through, we have gone through that. We used to go and approach investor in year 2002. An investor who is normally used to investing in software IT is asking good return in 3 years. I said, this is a core science. You can't get return in 3 years. You got to bet for 7 to 10 years. So that's a kind of challenge, okay? Even though it has a significant potential, but this mindset, whether it's an investor mindset, whether it's banker's mindset, or whether it's a industry mindset, or whether it's government mindset, or whether it's a regulatory body, because we have worked closely with the government bodies. So what barriers we have seen is mindset barrier at various stakeholder level. And who will take that risk? Even though everyone recognizes the importance of it, everyone says that this is good, but who will jump into the deep water? And that's one of the biggest challenges we face. And that's where whatever work we have done in the last 20 years, this could have been done easily in 5 years, but because of all these barriers, it took us almost 20 years. And new people who are going to enter, youngsters or new people are going to enter as a startup and everything, they'll have that challenge. And we are looking at the possibility of how do we create a platform where they don't have to reinvent the learning. And how do we bring together all the stakeholders so that we have an ecosystem for green chemistry based technology to arise quickly for the society. So only thing fantastically. I have seen in lab, it works in plant also, but who will take that initial couple of years risk? And the risk can be big. Today also we bet on 10 molecules. Our success rate is only 2. 8, we don't see through a solution because you run out of gas. You need to prioritize your investment. Now this is done privately, okay? We have never got any funding from any venture capitalists. We have never got funding from any government bodies. It is all we had to pump in our funding. So if all that ecosystem is available, then a lot of entrepreneur can thrive. And there's a lot of opportunity. So enormous benefit, but there are barriers to deal with.
So given what's happening today, Bhadresh Bhai, given the amount of pollution, given how it has affected our ecosystem, given how people's immunity has gone down, health has reduced and all that stuff, is there somebody who is thinking in terms of the longer term effects and saying we should invest in this area in and reducing the pollution, doing things right at source? Or do you think the barriers are still there in terms of maximizing profit?
Yeah, let me just give you a sense of journey from 1990 or 1980 when the chemical industry started rolling in India. From 1980 to 1990, there was no vocabulary called pollution in any stakeholder, whether industry, government, and there was no vocabulary. It didn't exist. It was a way of life. Pollution was a way of life in chemical zones. Then 1990 to 2000, that 10 years, the word pollution people did recognize as a vocabulary. And everything is fine. That's an attitude. You know, in a country like India, chalta hai. I've actually heard when I used to interact with industry people, okay, let's come together, let's do research, let's really look at how to solve this. And people will have that cynical, resigned smile. Okay, this doesn't happen here. Okay, so like big wall that we have experienced personally. In various stakeholders you go. Then China came into big competition to Indian chemical company. From 2000 to 2010, they had a tough time to survive even economically. Because China was simply competing. Because in China, they were not bothering about any environmental challenge. So Indian chemical industry had a tough time to compete with China. That's where some of the people, some of the industry people, they started thinking, all this which we are going as the West, can we tap it? And then can we compete effectively? They were not sensitive towards, whatever my experience, I didn't find they are sensitive towards the society, but I saw that they looking at that as a strategic advantage to compete with China. So there people started thinking, there are some people, not all, some people, this can be one strategy to be effective in competition. Some people from the industry started thinking about it. Then 2010 to 2020, because social media and all those things, the common man had an access what is happening and how pollution is happening. Anyone can take the video, anyone will put it in YouTube. The legal judiciary started treating very, very tough. In fact, in Ahmedabad, Gujarat High Court judge asked entire Vatva to close down because there are some villages away from Vatva. They all started getting colored water in the well. And the petition was filed at High Court, and High Court gave a complete closure notice to the entire Vatva chemical zone. It never happened like this. So closure notice become very common. And the cost of keeping your plant closed for 15 days, 1 month is enormous. So that's where they started putting effluent treatment plants and they started doing something. Some small company could not manage, they became part of what we call common effluent treatment plant. That is more out of survival rather than concern for society. And now, if we see, it is getting still tougher now. So now we are seeing in 2020, many industry people have started opening up that if they have to survive for next 10 years, they better do something solid law. And what we see now in 2020 to 2030, it's going to be quite an interesting journey. It can reach, green chemistry can reach to tipping point. It is something similar to what happened to our software and IT industry, in 1980. And then 1990, the point came, and from 1990 to 2000, just went up like anything. There is a possibility of green chemistry can go through that kind of phenomena. And I'm optimistic. I will love to see in my lifespan that happening.
Yeah.
Where in just one decade, everything gets transformed.
Yeah.
And that whole new knowledge.
Industry.
Yeah. And that huge potential of that knowledge is available to common man. They like the way it is available to now software IT. Even the beggar on the Bombay street, they have a mobile. The technology is available to everyone. So what we have observed for last 40 years and having been there and having toiled there, we are seeing that whole new reality is arising for green chemistry to be real in industry. In 2020 to 2030, I'm very optimistic. It can like just go zoom, zoom, like a tipping point. And that will be worth it for everyone on planet. When I say everyone, it's not only human being, all other species.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
During the lockdown, when many companies were temporarily suspended, in Baroda, where I am right now, we were able to see blue skies after maybe 10 years.
Absolutely.
Blue skies were a thing of the past because of pollution, and now we are actually able to see glimpses of blue skies. But as the lockdown stopped, again, it's gone back to that smog and all that. So it's a huge risk factor also from a health perspective.
Yeah. So it's amazing, to see what is possible. That's what still drives us. Okay, we are just waiting for the tipping point.
Yeah. So
we are actually not waiting. We actually standing being cause and matter to cause that tipping point.
Yeah, actively.
Yeah. We're just kind of playing for it, and we're willing to take on every barrier. In a way, the barrier is an opportunity. And we want to take everyone together. We don't want to be like those activists. Because we have to take everyone together. And that's where it can happen, when everyone comes on the same page. And the first thing we have to do to ensure that we don't have to make people wrong. And that's where we created this Green Chemistry Foundation. It's a non-profit activity. Its primary purpose is to bring together all stakeholders all those people who see green chemistry is a next generation possibility to really deal with our environment challenge. And we are interacting with every stakeholder there.
Question for you. During the pandemic, I didn't see you slowing down at all.
No, in fact, we have grown.
Yeah, tell me more about that, because
We have grown.
the industry was in a lockdown. You have actually been doing more work.
Yeah, we have grown. In fact, we created a project which can be so valuable, not just to Indian chemical industry, global chemical industry. So during this lockdown, when all team members were sitting at home, we created a project of making a web portal where we have consolidated all the green chemistry solution providers, technology providers, all those green chemistry knowledge creators. So we have created a whole providers people's database in a very structured way, and we are creating the access for all the people who will look for, who has a need, or they are looking for green chemistry solutions or technologies or knowledge. Something like Shadi.com. It's a green chemistry Shadi.com.
They're doing a matchmaker service for
Matchmaking, because what is happening in the world, there are so many people are creating great knowledge, great technology solutions. There are so many people in the world in industry that need it, but they don't know how to come together. They don't know where they're sitting. It is one of the barriers to accelerate implementation of green chemistry. So that is something where actually industry people and knowledge creator and knowledge consumer will come together. And we are going to play a role of catalyzing facilitator there also. So that the green chemistry, wherever in the world that knowledge is there or technology is there, solutions that can travel wherever needed in the world.
That's
And
fascinating.
yeah, and then we are so excited because this is one of the barriers. Any new startup company in the green chemistry will have a tremendous challenge. In fact, if you see the statistics of startup company in green chemistry over the last 10 years, out of every 100, only 1 or 2 survived. 98 to 99, they just got exhausted. And that's lost, not lost to that startup or those founders, it is lost to society. How do we make sure that out of every 100 startup, 50, 60, they see through? How do we reduce the barriers? One of the barriers is that how they can reach to where there's a need. And how does the catalyzing body arise? Because if green chemistry have to become real, we need to have a lot of startup. It requires a startup mindset. But startup has its own challenge. Startup needs quickly some few people coming forward and willing to take risks with a startup, because this is not like a software IT. It is, you got to build a prototype in lab, then you need to really look at the scale up, then you have to really look at economics, and then ultimately you go and create at plant level. It's a long journey. It's a journey of almost 9 to 12 months. But first thing is that people have to come together and start exploring. So we are connecting in this platform various stakeholders, whether it's the Ministry of Chemical and Fertilizer. In fact, they've agreed to give us funding for that. We've gotten them into give us funding. Then the Central Pollution Control Board, then some of the bankers. We're getting everyone in this platform in a various capacity, so that these people who create the knowledge and people who seek knowledge, they come together, and other bodies around. So during this lockdown, this is what got created. And also, we did not stop our activity. We are finding newer and newer ways with all safety. And we have actually increased our business from where it was almost doubled we have done during this lockdown. And the team members are operating from home. And everything is kind of, it's like the spirit is so high. Now here I'm going to acknowledge some of the things which is really working. One of the things that we always create in our team is we connect them to nature. In fact, it's not that when we are looking for a team member, we actually look at in their resume whether they had ever any hobby of mountaineering or nature or wildlife or anything. If it is there in their resume, we give a top priority to it. We don't look at the other academic credentials. Our experience is that these people who had some passion for nature, they somehow learn green chemistry. No, somehow that's my experience. Even I have some team member, they have no basic qualification in science. And they have become excellent green technologists in 15 years. They go and implement technology at even plant level because they had a deep connection to nature. They learned. And I had hired extremely competent academically people, whether from UDCT, IIT. And they ran out of gas. So it's something what we have found that we need to identify people who have some connection to nature, and we keep on empowering that in our team. That's one. Second, we keep connecting them to spirituality. In fact, we conduct every year around 11 Bhagavad Gita Gyan Yajna, 7 days. And our team members are involved in them, they organize it. So this whole spiritual dimension also is where they get connected to that, why they are here and why they are doing this, how they can serve society. Right now, there's a Bhagavad Gita. In a lockdown also, we didn't stop. Now we have done online. So there's a Swamiji in Rishikesh of 35 years of sadhana in Bhagavad Gita. Every day morning he takes Bhagavad Gita, couple of sloks, and gives a in-depth experience. So connecting to team to spirituality, connecting team to the nature, and connecting team to the green chemistry is what we keep on if we just creating that ongoing culture. In a lockdown, this has come very handy. Because we need a solid team, because there are barriers are solid, so we need a solid team. So it is not a job for them, it's some purpose they are up to. So it requires, the whole place from which they operate is not, it's a job for them.
It's not a job, it's a mission for you and your team then.
Absolutely.
So that reminds me, when people work on something that's touching their heart, it's touching the environment around them, it not only is beneficial for the world, but it's also beneficial for the individual.
Absolutely.
In what ways has working on green chemistry changed your life and changed you as a person, Bhadresh Bhai?
Yeah, one of the things that is impacted profoundly, is it has given me enormous peace within, even though I may be active 16, 18 hours a day. In any challenging time, just life is just normal. I can sleep like a kid. Somewhere that mission gives an energy to a level where you're not worried what will happen. And however big challenge comes, you keep on standing and say, okay, fine, we'll find a way. It's like you are so much at ease in the face of all uncertainty.
How about the
Because-
uncertainty around the pandemic itself? Where do you see people going, when we are going through all these changes in nature, and there's so much fear and anxiety because
Yeah,
of, potential loss of life and jobs.
right.
Where do you see things changing? And in what ways do you think the world will be different?
Actually, when we look at societies, there are 4 categories of people. That's why I say. Category 1, which is in denial state still. And I see quite a lot of them still in denial state, the way they move around. And I actually see them using this sentence called kuch nahi hota hai. They are the one who will pay heavy price. And they're paying also. They get hit very badly. I'm just telling you one of person I know in Pune, he was in denial. His parents went from Pune to Solapur. Instead of going in a car, for whatever reason, they went in ST bus. And they stayed on and came back. And they came back and they found positive. Yesterday night, his father expired. That denial state hit him very badly. But there's a good number of people who are in denial state and are not taking precaution. There's another category of people which is unnecessarily worrying too much. They are unnecessary, more than what is needed. They're just worried. They're not doing anything about it, or they're not taking precaution. That category also is there. There's a third category which is taking precaution and taking care. But that still is not sufficient the way things numbers are going up. And the way uncertainty also is going up. We need quickly now 4th category. A 4th category is someone not only they're taking care of themselves, but now they become someone who creates community, which community starts taking care. Individual approach is not going to work. I'm taking care of myself. I don't know what others are doing. So that's the 4th category approach we have taken. All our team member, everyone says you make sure that your family member, your neighbors, your relatives, your whole, wherever you have reached to any community, stand there and invite people to be in touch with reality and rise to whatever reality demands. There's a huge opportunity there. That's what we did to our customer. Many of our customers were closed down. We just stood by them and said, "You rise, we'll back you up." Someone has to keep providing that empowerment. Because you don't exist in isolation society. You're a social creature. Our transporters, our team members, everyone, because their families are worried to send them to work. So we need to take the whole community along in a way that it's not stupidity, but it's completely grounded into reality. So category 4 will thrive in every respect. The business will go up, the energy will go up, they will ride on this challenge. A category 3 will survive in this challenge. So they still focus on only them. They are not focused as a community. A category 2 which is worried too much will weaken the immune system and they'll fall prey to it. Unnecessary people worry too much and they kind of, the immune system is going to get down and down, they will be vulnerable. And a category 1 anyway they're going to hit because they just, so I'm saying in around my where I stay, my neighborhood, my relatives, my friend circles, the people are getting hit. And when I analyze, I find primarily denial state people are getting hit very badly. And then worried kind of people are getting hit. The category 3 is safe, but they may not rise to the level at which the opportunity is available. So category 4 can create a huge opportunity out of this. But unfortunately, the percentage of people, if you see distribution, will be different. A category 1 is still large. Category 2 is also large. Category 3 is less, and the category 4 is very less.
So have you seen examples of people in category 4 and the new opportunities that have been created during the pandemic in the last few months?
Yeah, I was just talking to one of my friend who was doing business of flower bouquets in South Bombay. And he has a big team and it does good business of just giving bouquets. It's a well-settled business for almost 1.5 to 2 decades. And when this crisis hit, he was caught off guard because none of those people wanted anyone to come and deliver in their house. And especially they are fine with not having flower in the house. But what I saw, that he actually took the category 4 approach and he reinvented his entire business by taking along all his customers and everything. Where he asked to all the customers that what is that you really want me to serve you? And many of them came out with the suggestion that can you give us exotic vegetable at home? He had everything, staff, everything in place. He has to just now change the product. And he changed the product. His business is thriving. His profit margin has gone up significantly.
I'm wondering which.
He started thinking.
So what did he finally produce?
He actually sustained his business. He sustained the employment of his team members. He sustained his customer and served them what he needs. And along with that, he started creating awareness to all his customers, how they can be safe with this whole pandemic. So he was standing, in a whole new paradigm called how can he serve his customer in this pandemic so that they are getting what they want at the same time they are safe, they are not hit by pandemic. He didn't think about how I will survive. He think about how I'll serve. He didn't get into getting worried about your denial state. And he didn't think, okay, let me see how I can survive. Let me lay off all these people. So he
Wow.
had a complete different thinking, community thinking. That's a category 4.
It's amazing to see that the kind of work you are doing and your team is doing. I've also noticed that you've been serving people who didn't have access to food security during the pandemic. Can you tell us
Yeah,
about that a little bit?
that's basically I back up. My wife is doing that. She runs the NGO, and she is passionately kind of working with these tribal villages, and her main focus is how to make the tribal ladies self-sufficient in all respect. And during pandemic, they had a severe challenges, so they needed the necessary rations for their survival. That's where there was whole campaign was launched, and that's where I also thought that I need to back that up, and that's where I sent some communications to our IT network also. So it all credit goes to her. I just see whatever I can provide. I think we are in a time where we have to start living as community. We cannot live like an individual. We need to be sensitive to, and we need to be like community. So this kind of challenge no one can solve individually. So what it will take to arise to that new mindset called I am community rather than I'm individual. And that's where I see the spirituality has some role to play. Because that's where the spirituality can give a whole new access from individual, how you can actually operate as a community. And that's where I'm quite nowadays getting involved in wisdom of Bhagavad Gita. So that's what I also invite, because it's like I in fact communicate to my team that we need to be aware of 4 levels of our health. One is spiritual health, second is our mental health, third is our physical health, and fourth is our social health. But what is happening, instead of these 4 health, people are more focused on financial health.
That's true. That's true.
Financial health will be taken care if we address this 4 health. So that's where unworkability. Too much people are focused on financial health. What is needed on apex, I will say spiritual health, then mental health, then the physical health, and then the social health. Because to do any community work, you need your body with you. How much your body is healthy. You need to take care of your body. You need to take care of your mind, where it has to think. In all challenging time, how it will think and come out with the creative solutions. And sure, the spiritual health. So I'm campaigning to people who I know in my community that this 4 health is more priority than financial health. Financial health will be taken care. We got our priority somewhere in a wrong place.
For the reminder. Have we covered everything, or is there anything else you would like to talk about how people can go and have a more meaningful time during this pandemic? Everybody's trying to run away and say, okay, let 2020 be over. Suddenly there'll be a miracle. I don't see any sudden miracles happening. I don't see it.
People are not in touch with reality. And to be in touch in reality, one thing I would like to recommend to people is utilize whatever time that you are getting due to this pandemic. You are getting extra time. In Mumbai, people get a lot of extra time because they don't have to travel much. They don't have to be in traffic. That time, because time you need to invest and I invite them to invest that time in spiritual health. As the time gets tougher, that will come handy. The spiritual health is something that people can invest in. Normally I recommend people to invest at least 1 to 2 hours in spiritual health. Because the way things are there, it is not going to get normal. And you have to reinvent yourself to be with this situation, which is very dynamic and volatile. And the spiritual health can get very handy. It will show way to various challenges that this pandemic is throwing and is going to keep throwing at us.
Well, I truly appreciate your wake-up call, because it's very clear to me that the physical disease is only one part of the manifestation. There's a lot of social dynamic, there's an emotional and mental dynamic, and there is a connection to our nature. Why are we here? What is our purpose? It was really great catching up. We've been talking after almost 33 years face to face like this.
Absolutely.
Although we're not back in the hostel, the dorm. And I'm so grateful we're talking about various things. Bhadresh Bhai, it was really amazing to catch up with you and see a whole new Bhadresh that I didn't know existed when I was in college. I knew you were into wild animals. I knew you had those amazing movies screened on campus. But now I'm seeing that you're doing it in the real world. You're reminding people to be in touch with nature, to be in touch with their inner nature, to be in touch with the community. And that's really very gratifying. I'm grateful.
Yeah. And thank you for getting connected and kind of, creating this space where we could have a conversation.
Yeah, I think we need more of these conversations, and also action. Conversation followed by action. So I'm grateful to you and your wife for actually working non-stop during the pandemic. I have not seen you resting at all. You're so energized.
I wake up in the morning at 4 o'clock.
Same here, same here. We should do a 4 o'clock meeting.
I wonder why we have to invest in sleep. To invest that much only that body needs.
True.
And actually during pandemic, I created 2 more hours to kind of invest in a spiritual health, not only for me, but for the community. Inside that, we created this online discourse of Bhagavad Gita, and I spend almost 1 hour daily connecting people to that.
So please share the links to that so we can give it to the community. I'll ask you for it, and we can share it along with this video.
Sure.
So thanks again. Stay in touch, and we will share the contact information for Bhadresh Padia as well as me. And if there's a need to learn more, we can always have a follow-on session on any of these topics.
Sure, definitely. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Please stay in touch.